let's do it. Okay, so thank you everyone for those of you that are here and for the many of you that are online. And it is our pleasure to get started with the second edition of the Zenoh user meeting, the Zoom 23, as we called it this year, and I think as we'll continue to call it in the year to come. So I'm Angelo Corsaro, the Zenoh project lead and ZettaScale CEO and CTO, and I will go through the agenda real quickly, and then we'll take 15 minutes to do 1 year retrospective to try to understand what has happened in this one year. So besides the opening remarks that we'll try to keep short because we have an agenda packed with presentation, we have 10 users that will be presenting today their use cases on Zenoh. Some of which are here. Thank you for having made the effort. Some of which have shared the video. So that's the case of Hideki because he's in Japan. It will be very late for him. But don't worry because next week you'll have a chance to see him live at the user meeting in Tokyo. So after the opening remarks, 1 year retrospective, 10 contribution from very interesting end user. So we'll kick off with Samuel from FLECS, a use case in industrial automation, to move then to Rodrigo from the Construct, which is one of the leading ROS2 educational companies and R&D companies in Europe, which will share his experience with Zenoh, to move then to NXP and precisely Peter van der Perk, again, super interesting use case on drones. Sara Gallian, which will be telling a little bit about the software-defined vehicle initiative in Eclipse and the role that Zenoh is playing in context. Then a super interesting use case from Filics. We learned recently about their use case. Their CTO visited our office 2 weeks ago, I believe. It's super cool robotics use case. I think everyone will be enchanted by this, and I'm pleased that they accepted to present at our user meeting. Then Franco Cipollone and Yadu will be telling a little bit the experience on Zenoh as a ROS2 RMW alternate. And Stephen Hartley from General Motors will be discussing about the integration that are taking place between U protocol, GMU protocol, and Zenoh. Then we will have Elias, which is here sitting with us, telling a little bit about the use case of Tractonomy, why they use Zenoh, and what is their use case. Hideki Takase will, delighting us with some longevity Elixir. Okay, so he brought Elixir to Zenoh, and we'll learn a little bit more what it means, how it looks like, and why this is some pretty exciting news, and in which context they are using Elixir in some robotics research at the University of Tokyo. And we'll conclude with Christopher Helpa from TTTech Auto that will be showing some interesting results of a collaboration with our R&D team on data flow programming for automotive using Zenoh Flow, some of which some of you will recall perhaps. We've had a presentation on Zenoh Flow also at the last user meeting. Then the ball will be back on the Zenoh team camp, and we'll tell you what we're planning as next feature. We'll do some QA, and for those of you that are here, or those of you that still have the time to join, there will be food, drinks, and we'll be here around up to when we will have energy. Okay, so let's start with 1 year of Zenoh. What has happened, and where are we going? So looking back, first things that I would like to recall is that one of the things that we did very early on in 2023 was to give kind of a personality, a face, and a visual to our dragon. I think it always was alive in our mind, right? But we tried to make it alive for all of you, and that was the first cartoon that we posted, introducing the series of cartoons and comics that we release every single month or anytime there is something special, where we use some kind of, I would say, Socratic dialogue between the dragon and a robot, or perhaps the dragon and some other of his friends, one of which is our other product, Cyclone, either to tell interesting news or to kind of give away some concept around the protocol itself. So I guess all of you are, getting now accustomed to us communicating through comics. And that was indeed one of the things that we did in 2023, which is give the Blue Dragon protocol actually a proper face, a character, and make it alive. Which I think it's always better, because middleware is like the nervous system; it's invisible, and it's easier when you have a way of visualizing what you do, and if it is in a kind of a smart way, even better. But let's move away for a moment, just for a moment, from comics, and let's talk about feature. So this year we released a pretty impressive set of feature, and I'm going to go only through the key one. Okay, so they are more or less, I would say, in chronological order, but not always. So we had already support for TLS in 2022, but this year we extended that with support for mutual TLS, so MTLS, and support for using the Let's Encrypt framework. We expanded plugins, and one of the plugins that actually we added around June was the MQTT plugin. This is an important one because MQTT is a very common protocol. As we know, it has severe topological constraint, right? And what our plugin allows you to do is to deploy an MQTT plugin essentially wherever you want, and then routing between them through Zenoh, as illustrated in this slide. Something else that we added was a feature that we wanted to put in for quite some time, which was the ability to have a payload or in query. So Zenoh query, typically you would add payload or argument as part of the query expression. You could put everything, but that would mean you want to put an image, you have to, in some cases, base64 encode it, which is not very, very convenient. And so we made it possible now, whenever you issue a query, you can attach an arbitrary payload, and that will be available to the entity that executes the query. Obviously, some of the user, and I'll get back to that, we're waiting for this feature, which again makes some use cases even more efficient than how they were before. We added support for S3 and Minio, so now you can store data on Amazon if you're using Amazon S3, or potentially you can use Minio as a self-host solution, and in a progress or in a process to move toward automotive, we started making Zenoh Pico compliant with MISRA C. Okay, and more to that in a couple of slides. We added finally C++ APIs. Okay, so Zenoh, the core of Zenoh is written in Rust. Historically, our API were mostly Rust, Python. Those were the first two API that we had. And then we had C, and now we have support for C++. C++ API that allow you to target just as compile switch or compile option, both the full-blown Zenoh as well as Zenoh Pico. We added API to detect connectivity status, which is also quite important when you need to perform differently or different action based on the fact that you are connected or not to the network or to a router or whatever. Based on the request that we had received at the ROS conference, we had made a ROS1 plugin. So the ROS1 plugin allows now to route ROS1 traffic on Zenoh. Julian will be giving a little bit more details on this plugin, and how also it relates to the ROS2 plugin. And another feature that was introduced was transport whitelisting. In Zenoh, recall that we can sit as low as the data link, and we support plenty transport. You can run on serial, you can run on potentially Bluetooth, you can run on shared memory, Unix socket, WebSocket, TCP/IP, QUIC, you name it. And this feature allows you to decide the set of transports that a runtime is supposed to use or can use. Another super important addition was the support for liveliness and liveliness token. So this is an important feature because it allows you to assert liveliness of entities across a network, and it has built-in support in the protocol. So this can, if you implement this at application level, can usually start generating or causing the generation of lots of traffic. What we wanted to make sure is that we could provide some abstraction for you to detect liveliness of application, perhaps building group management protocols, while at the same time ensuring that you have scalability. Because we have some special logic in our protocol. So that has been added. As you will see, this is one of the key elements that is used within the ROS2 plugin and will be used as part of the ROS2 RNW for Zenoh, and I think was a pretty important addition in 2023. Again, look our blogs or take a look at the RFC to learn more about it. But that's quite powerful mechanism, powerful and scalable. Then there were quite a few protocol extensions, and as you have noticed, in the latest release that was Dragonite, we introduced some wiring compatible changes. Don't worry, because we are going to introduce another series of wiring compatible changes in the next release, and then we promise we'll be done. I mean, so far we try to live to our promises, right? At some point we said, guys, we'll stabilize the API, and we made sure that our API is now entirely built around the builder pattern. So that gives us the ability to change, to expand, extend the API without breaking backward compatibility. Now, we didn't want to freeze our protocol because the number of use cases was changing and expanding. We were learning more about use cases that perhaps we had not necessarily thought when we started the protocol. And so there were some new features that we wanted to put in. And we think that now we are in a position where, based on the current user base, with the next batch of a protocol extension, we'll be able, as we'll discuss later, and Luca will discuss later, to stabilize, call the protocol 1.0 and guarantee backward compatibility, as we did for the API essentially earlier this year or late 2022. I can't even recall anymore. But besides the stabilization of the protocol, and as we will see, the version 1.0, so the graduation into version 1.0 of Zenoh protocol, in Dragonite, we had several improvements, notably support for multicast and some additional optimization for constrained devices. We also rebuilt the Rust plugin. So the Wireshark plugin, the original plugin was built in Lua and was having serious performance utilization under heavy workloads. The new plugin is built on Rust and is based on the exact code base of the protocol. So any changes on the protocol is reflected immediately on the Wireshark. So there is no potential for bifurcation. We introduced API for Kotlin, which opens the door to the use of Zenoh in Android. And you can already find in our repository some example of a client application or UI application for Android using Zenoh with the Kotlin API. Other addition that was done was an ultra latency transport that goes hand in hand with some shared memory links that further reduce the Zenoh latency. ROS2 plugin, so that was another important addition. Again, Julian will describe the detail of this, but this further improves our usability and performance by quite a bit of the DDS plugin. So we had built a DDS plugin that wasn't specific to ROS2. This ROS2 plugin leverages all the semantics that we can assume in a ROS2 system that uses Zenoh, that uses DDS as an RNW. The performance are far better than the DDS plugin, and the support for actions as well as the support for rows graph and introspection, as Julian will demonstrate, are just incredible in this plugin. We released the Zetta platform. So this is our PaaS offering from ZettaScale that allows you to automatically and in just a matter of a few clicks provision a Zen infrastructure that spans from your favorite cloud provider down to your device. Okay, more later we'll have some demonstration. Now, if we move away from features, what has happened on the market? So let's start with robotics. So this year, I think, was the year in which Zenoh really witnessed an incredible adoption in robotics. So we have now quite a few commercial deployment of Zenoh in R2X. That's just because it was making it much easier to operate robots or possible to operate robots across wireless network. Again, we have heard from some users story like, I was booting up my robots over a wireless using ROS off-the-shelf RMW, couldn't communicate, right? Whichever is the default RMW. Then using the DDS plugin, and that works. And if you move to the ROS2 plugin, that will be even better, as I said, as we will demonstrate later. But in any case, I think that as we will see, the word has spread. Our user found that Zen was bringing important value in this domain, and that's perhaps the domain where we've had already had an advantage in terms of adoption, but it has grown more than any other domain this year. Other incredible things, and you see the dragon celebrating, right, going completely crazy around this. His dream come true. Zenoh was selected after a very thorough study as the RNW alternate. So again, there is a report. We'll provide, maybe guys, you can post on the chat the link to the report, but there is a report that has been created by the ROS2 working group and Intrinsic, analyzing the requirements of robotics application, looking essentially at the bulk of the protocol available. And Zenoh was the protocol that ranked as the best choice for robotics in 2023, which is incredible. I mean, we are very proud of that. And as you will see, we are very, very happy to support this endeavor and supporting already the ROS ecosystem and Intrinsics building this RMW. In automotive, a few things happened also. The tail of 2022, but this happened between the last user meeting and this user meeting, so I'll still consider in the last year. The ITUT selected Zenoh after 2-year study as the protocol to be standardized for intelligent transport system communication. Read the report, it's quite interesting. 2 years long project that looked at all the protocols, and there was one use case that they couldn't solve, that of the digital witness. Okay, and once again, easy to solve in Zenoh by means of distributed queries. ZettaScale got ranked as one of the startup to watch in 2023 because of Zenoh. And we were identified as a key technology provider by this analyst firm in vehicle-to-anything communication or vehicle-to-everything communication. So once again, interesting because in a domain, right, where we start to make our first steps, we already get some recognition. And I think it's quite normal because we've seen a cross-contamination from robotics to automotive. That cross-contamination is happening faster and faster. And so it will be, perhaps that will further accelerate the adoption of Zenoh in automotive, which is already, as we will see, happening. Talking about that, we will learn a little bit more in Sara's presentation, but the role of Zenoh in automotive and the relevance of Zenoh in automotive has also been recognized by the SDV, the Eclipse Software Defined Vehicle, which is an initiative, a pretty impressive initiative organized by Eclipse with participants like Covesa, General Motors, Bosch, and so on and so forth, trying to develop an open source infrastructure for software-defined vehicle. Zenoh has been selected as one of the communication middleware in addition to MQTT. And as you can imagine, MQTT has been there forever. Today is used quite a bit for R2X. I mean, there are some challenges today that that are well known with respect to support for high throughput or even topologies. But for sure, MQTT cannot address the requirement of the on-vehicle communication. And that's, as we will see, the first target where Zenoh is being looked at. As such, Eclipse U protocol, so U protocol was a protocol contributed by General Motors to Eclipse, decided to implement a binding to Zenoh as the first protocol bind to U protocol. And Stephen will be telling a little bit more about this in his presentation. To finish up with automotive, AutoSAR Classic now also has support for Zenoh. We added support, and in fact, we've integrated Zenoh Pico in MicroSAR, which is vector AutoSAR Classic implementation, and we are going for ASIL-D certification. Okay, so in that respect, if you want to have a car that runs on Zenoh, right, will soon be possible, not just because of the integration, but also because of the certification. What is happening in other verticals? Well, I mean, Zenoh is being adopted widely across verticals. We have, and we learn almost daily, right? Because being open source, we can't easily keep track of who is using. And by the way, it's always good to let us know when you're a user, because it gives us lots of pleasure, let's say. But I mean, a couple of days ago, we found out by accident, right, Gabriele, that we are being used by a blockchain. I can't recall the name. Bytewire, yes. And we found out by accident. So kudos, guys, on that. So they focus on performance. They were, there are some pretty impressive comments on our Discord, because they care about performance, and they were mentioning that Zenoh was even too fast. They had to slow down some part of their infrastructure. Otherwise, certain things weren't working as expected on their side anymore. Anyway, so we have application interscale analytics platforms in blockchains, industrial automation, and we will see, for instance, the first presentation is precisely on industrial automation and counting. Okay, so the momentum is growing, which is great. And just to pinpoint one of the reasons of this adoption, especially on large-scale application or application that requires integration of very heterogeneous environment, is perhaps this article that was written by Amazon early in 2023 that compares the key established protocol, so MQTT, AMQP, DDS, and COPE, and looks after all the limitations that this protocol have to address IoT application, and then concludes, well, perhaps Zenoh is the way to go for the kind of system that we're trying to build. And this is actually what we are seeing. So exciting times for our Blue Dragon protocol. All of this obviously wouldn't be possible without the team. And compared to last year, the team has grown quite a bit. So this is part of the team, not all the team. Some of the people were not here because either they are sick, unfortunately, so recover soon, or for other reasons. But let's say that's the bulk of the team, and a team that continues to grow, and I think a team that keeps quite motivated, and they are all here. So we took this picture right before starting the stream, so it's really hot from the press. And so the question is, what's next? But, okay, so we are in Paris with the user meeting. We are going to Japan, and the dragon can fly, so the sky isn't even the limit. But jokes apart, we'll see a little bit what's next in terms of feature in Lucas' presentation later on. And at this point, what we'll do is to just give me a couple of minutes, a few tenths of seconds, to start coordinating with the speaker and start with the end user presentations.